One of the biggest biomedical issues facing us today is the use of stem cells in both biomedical therapies and in biomedical research. Now, the Church's position on stem cells is often characterized in the popular press as anti-science. To understand the Church's real position and how it supports true life-saving biomedical research, you have to understand the different types of stem cells. Right? There are two basic types. There's adult stem cells and embryonic stem cells. Now, adult stem cells are stem cells that are found in tissues of anything other than an embryo for the most part. So in adults, you can take fat and isolate stem cells from that. That's what I work on here at Franciscan University. You can get stem cells from bone marrow. Right? You can get stem cells from amniotic fluid. You can get stem cells from placenta. All of these types of stem cells are called adult stem cells, even though some are gotten from a placenta, for example. None of these stem cells, when you isolate them, do you have to destroy human life. They can all be taken with minimal or almost no side effects to the person you're taking the cells from. Okay. Embryonic stem cells require taking an embryo, extracting the cells from it, and killing the embryo. It's every way in which you get cells, embryonic stem cells, requires the destruction of human life. Now, of these two types, adult stem cells have been used for decades, particularly in bone marrow transplants, but there's many, many therapies that have been developed over the last 10 to 20 years that take advantage of adult stem cell therapies, anything from heart disease to joint problems. Now, a lot of these are in their infancy and are still experimental, but they are hitting the clinic. In terms of embryonic stem cells, there's been few and far between treatments that have gotten anywhere to the clinic. Most of them are stuck in clinical trials. Now, part of the reason is that embryonic stem cells are much more difficult to work with than adult stem cells. It's almost like taking adult stem cells would be like a mild pony you're trying to train, and embryonic stem cells would be like a wild stallion you're trying to train to do something. And that makes embryonic stem cells much more difficult to manage and to work with. That said, theoretically, they could in the future lead to certain cures or treatments. But adult stem cells are already there. They're already at the forefront. They're already at the clinic. Now, the question that the Church asks is, why do you want to, as a society, for example, pursue these research techniques and therapies that require the destruction of human life when you have a set of therapies and research techniques that you can use with adult stem cells that are morally unproblematic? You don't have to destroy human life to do it. And this is a key point, because just because someone opposes some type of scientific research doesn't mean they are anti-science. Science is a process that humans do, and everything that humans do has to be governed by certain ethical or moral norms. Right? So just any scientific research at all is not a free-for-all, for example. You could say, well, the Nazis, for example, they did scientific research on hypothermia, where they took concentration camp people and put them into very cold temperatures against their will and got some great data about how the human body responds to really cold temperatures. Well, that's science, that's a process. We would all hopefully say, well, that is something that's unethical. We wouldn't want to do that. But my opposition to doing that is not make me by nature anti-science. What I want is ethical science, and that's where the Church comes down. Just because you can do something, because you can take embryonic stem cells from an embryo, just kill the embryo, and do some research with that, doesn't mean it should be done. There are ethical and moral norms that we as a society have to take into account to say, this is the type of science we want to do. And the Church is very strong in its position that we want science that is going to build up a culture of life that isn't from the very beginning of the science going to be destroying a human individual. And therefore, it puts not only its verbal and vocal support behind adult stem cell research, but it actually has put financial support behind that in helping finance certain adult stem cell companies, sponsoring conferences, and trying to change the culture to say, hey, this is where we want to go as a culture. We don't want to move towards life-destroying techniques. We want to use the stem cells that are there in the adult tissues that are able to be harvested in an ethical manner, because those are what show the most promise, and those do not send us into a culture of death, where we're devaluing life to take cells from an individual that's going to be killed.